Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. I am very happy to participate in this third international conference, which has been aptly named as Conference on Hinduism, Management and Philosophy. And this is being conducted by Bhagavad Gita Research Foundation, BGRF. So this is the third conference. I had the privilege to attend the first conference live in London. And this topic is very useful, especially the management part of it, because this itself shows that this is not an academic conference. As just now it was mentioned, that books written by academicians or ideas discussed by academicians have certain value, but the real value is of any subject, whether it is Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, Upanishads, or any other life philosophy, it depends on the practitioner to a large extent. So in that context, I would like to discuss a few points on what Swami Vivekananda spoke about Bhagavad Gita in particular and Vedanta in general. So first and foremost, let me begin with one of his quotes, that Bhagavad Gita is the best authority on Vedanta. And further, he says the whole gist of Upanishads is contained in the Gita. Now, what does Bhagavad Gita do? It takes the ideas of the Upanishads. These are his own words. He says the Bhagavad Gita takes the ideas of the Upanishads and they are strung together with the idea of bringing out a compact, condensed and systematic form of the whole subject of the Upanishads or Vedanta. Not that Upanishads don't deal with this subject, but in Upanishads we have to wander through a maze of so many irrelevant subjects, some rituals, perhaps some rituals which were relevant at that time, but for the present day it may not be very relevant or meaningful for us. So there are many things mixed up in the Upanishads, and from that Bhagavad Gita has taken the gist and it introduces these different truths, these great truths. Just as in the midst of a huge wilderness, a traveler will unexpectedly come and see a beautiful rose with all the leaves, thorns, roots all entangled. So out of this maze of different things, a beautiful flower, a bouquet of beautiful flowers has been strung together, and that is Gita. So compared with the Upanishads, where you have to work hard to get these wonderful nuggets of truth or truths of Vedanta, the life philosophy of Vedanta. But here, Sri Krishna has done a wonderful job by arranging all these beautiful flowers in their proper places according to the 18 different yogas as he has described each chapter. And finally, the choicest flowers taken from the forest of Vedanta. That is how Sri Swami Vivekananda describes the Bhagavad Gita. And then he says this Bhagavad Gita, which is part of the Mahabharata, everybody knows, was brought out from that text for the first time by Sri Shankaracharya in a very prominent way. And he preached the Gita by writing a beautiful commentary on that. After that, you will find every Acharya who followed Shankaracharya took upon themselves the task of writing commentaries on this great book, because it is part of Mahabharata. Of course, Mahabharata was being read for several centuries, but Gita got more and more importance because all the orthodox sects, the founders of all orthodox sects, Ramanuja, Madhva, and all the other founders of these orthodox texts of Hinduism, they thought that they can preach their particular philosophy of whether it is Vishishtadvaita, whether it is Dvaita, Advaita. All of them believed, even the others like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and their followers, Vallabhacharya's followers, everybody thought that their preaching would be incomplete if they did not write a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So Swamiji says it was the great glory of Shankaracharya, who for the first time gave so much of importance to Gita. Of course, Upanishads are our Vedas are our scriptures. For Hinduism, considers Vedas to be, or the Upanishads to be, the Shrutis. They are definitely very important. But to give Gita the importance it deserves, after Shankaracharya wrote the beautiful commentary, and after which every Acharya or every preacher of Vedanta tried to write a commentary. That's why we find there are so many wonderful commentaries based on their particular founders' viewpoints, though they may appear to be antagonistic to each other. But if you read the Gita in its essence, as Krishna did, he harmonized all the previous sects before him. There were so many religious ideas based on the Vedas. The Vedic culture is very old, much older than the Bhagavad Gita. So it was Krishna's, according to Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, it was Krishna's great achievement that he strung together all the wonderful thoughts of Vedanta in a very, very comprehensive way and a very systematic way, bringing about all the different ideas of the Upanishads, the great eternal truths of the Shrutis, which are our Upanishads. So that's why he says, Swami Vivekananda says, in fact, most of his talks on the Gita were delivered in San Francisco. When he went to America for the second time, he delivered some very memorable talks which have been compiled together in the form of a book, Bhagavad Gita by Swami Vivekananda. So there are many talks. He gave 3 major talks on the Bhagavad Gita in San Francisco in 1901 when he visited America for the second time. So there he writes in one of the talks, he writes, you cannot understand Krishna. Krishna can never be understood until you have studied the Gita, because he was the embodiment of his own teaching. Just as one speaker mentioned a few minutes ago, that an academician writing a book based on borrowed knowledge is something different. Whereas Sri Krishna was the inspirer of the Gita. His life was his own message. So each one of these incarnations, when they come, they have to be living in illustrations of what they came to preach. Suppose Gita is not just a sermon or not just a talk or a lecture or something like that, which he delivered on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But according to Swamiji, he was the preacher of Gita. Sri Krishna was a personification of the teachings that are embodied in this great book. And out of that, one of the most important things which he singles out was his great illustration of action without attachment, non-attachment. So that is why Mahatma Gandhi, when he wrote his own commentary, his thoughts on the Gita, he called it Anasakti Yoga. Anasakti Yoga was his commentary, that he believed that Anasakti or non-attachment is the central theme of the Bhagavad Gita. If we see Sri Krishna's whole life, he was an embodiment of non-attachment. Whether it was Gokula, Vrindavan, everywhere he does his Leela, but when he leaves that place, he's not attached to anything, anywhere. He did not even stay in Dwarka long enough. He was always moving. A wonderful attachment of a karma yogi who is continuously doing his work and not getting attached to anything, anywhere. So that gives power to the words of the Gita. And Gita speaks, according to Vivekananda, one of the greatest ideas that come out of Bhagavad Gita is the idea of non-attachment. Non-attachment to the lower personality, attachment to the soul or the divine within oneself. So that is why he says, commenting on the second chapter of the Gita, he gave 2-3 in this series of lectures. He says, Sri Krishna spoke the Gita by establishing himself in the Atman. In the second chapter, which we see, the wonderful chapter where he dispels the fear which was in the heart of Arjuna and gives him a message of tremendous strength. So that's why Swamiji liked the second chapter, Swami Vivekananda liked the second chapter very much. And he says, those passages of the Gita where he uses the word I, take refuge in me alone. So that means be established in the Atman. That is Swamiji's view on this subject. He says the knowledge of the Atman, the Sankhya Yoga as it is is the chapter heading of the second chapter of the Gita. That is the heading. This knowledge of the Atman, according to Swami Vivekananda, is the highest aim of the Gita. There are several references to other yogas, but he believes other yogas are there, Bhakti Yoga, there are so many other yogas, Dhyana Yoga and all those things. But the second chapter, according to Swamiji, contains the essence of the entire Gita, because this knowledge of the Atman is the highest aim of the Gita. And the references to the yoga, there may be many, but they are incidental, or they are incidental to this realization of the Atman. The human soul, because of its very nature, being bound by the senses and the body and the other things, and is being represented by Arjuna, was touched with fear. Therefore, according to Swamiji, Bhagavan Sri Krishna established himself in the Atman and spoke to him the teachings of the Gita. Still, we find in the first chapter itself that fear of fighting the war. It's not that he felt bad that he has to kill other people. Some strange kind of fear, depressive fear came, and he was not willing to fight. Later, when Arjuna saw the universal form of the Lord and became established in the Atman, that was when the Vishwarup Darshan, Sri Krishna had to show his universal form to Arjuna and shake off all fear from the heart of Arjuna. And he says, it is then the bondages of karma burnt by the fire of knowledge. He became fearless and he fought the battle. So that is what Swami believes. That's why in one place in San Francisco, in one of his lectures, he says everywhere on this earth, everywhere we see an atmosphere of fear, the fear of death, fear of losing money, fear of losing so many things. This fear is possessing most of the people who are attached to the gross world. So the knowledge of Atman alone can remove this sorrow. So that is why Swamiji gave so much importance to this one verse from the Gita, Klaibyam masma gamapartha naitatva upapadyate shudram rudaya daurbalyam tyaktva tishta uttishta parantapa. That means, from where has this weakness come upon you? You are such a wonderful general, ready to fight. And Swamiji believed that the merits of reading the entire Gita, I went to the extent of saying that if this one verse is remembered and assimilated, not just remembered or read daily, but if it is assimilated and it becomes part of our personality. In fact, the word personality, which is being used so many times these days, everybody talks of personality development and other things. The word persona itself means a mask. It has come from the word mask. So what we speak of personality in the ordinary sense is just trying to put on different masks, which are not our real self. The real personality is the self. So Swamiji believed that if you can proclaim this message to the whole world, Klaibyam masma gama partha, he's telling Partha, shake off this weakness. Then he says, all disease, all grief, sin, sorrow, and all our problems will vanish off from the face of the earth. All these ideas of weakness will be nowhere. Now it is everywhere, this current of vibration of fear. Reverse this current, bring about an opposite vibration, and behold the magic of transformation, the magic transformation. Thou art the omnipotent. That is the essence of the second chapter of the Gita. Hate not the most abject sinner. Look not to his exterior. Turn the gaze inward, where you will realize this Atman, where resides the Paramatma, and proclaim to the whole world with trumpet voice, there is no sin in thee, there is no misery in thee. Thou art the reservoir of omnipotent power. Arise, awake, and manifest this divinity within. So in Krishna, according to Swamiji, these two ideas, first the fearlessness that you get by standing alone on the Atman which is the substratum of all the relative existence that we see around us. It is trying to intimidate us. But that is because we are attached more and more to the gross universe, the changing universe. But something changeless, if by our spiritual practices we are able to touch this changeless Atman, the divine within, the Paramatma within, or the Atman within, then alone man can reach perfection and the highest goal of life. Whether he's sitting on a throne, whether he's a beggar, whether he's commanding armies, or whether he is working out big plans for the nation. So, and see, Swamiji reminds, you should remember that this philosophy was not taught in some retreat or some place or in the forest, in some quiet place. It was preached on the battlefield itself, the battlefield of life. So this was Swamiji's idea, that Gita should be taken up as a very, very practical manual which will give us not only the ideas but the inspiration to fight the battle of life. So now the other topic, I think I have a few minutes, so I'll just conclude after a brief discussion. The other idea which Swami Vivekananda says, yes. So other topic which he says, that Upanishads, there are a lot of ideas about Shraddha. The word Shraddha is used in many places, but we hardly find the idea of Bhakti in the Upanishads. But taking this idea of Shraddha, which is a faith-based, Swami Vivekananda believed that the word Shraddha has not been translated properly, or it cannot be translated properly into English. Shraddha means not just faith, that is Vishwas, but Shraddha means something deeper than faith. It's a faith based on conviction, on some kind of experience, some kind of realization. So this bhakti, the idea of bhakti, which has been taken from the Upanishads and developed into an independent philosophy in Bhakti Yoga and many other chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So he says Gita, the Sri Krishna has taken up this idea of Shraddha from the Upanishads and converted into a concrete philosophy. So that is another contribution, or that is another idea which Swamiji has expressed. But then he says the main idea, or one important idea which Bhagavad Gita teaches us, is the idea of karma yoga. No doubt our karma determines what we deserve and what we can assimilate and what we can achieve in life. And naturally, we believe that we are responsible for what we are. And whatever we wish ourselves to be, we have the power to make ourselves. So this is the karma theory, which even Buddhists and Jains accept, that you are a result of your own karma, your past karma, over several lives, if you believe in rebirth. And then that karma decides what you are at present. So what we are, if what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, then it certainly follows that whatever we wish to be in the future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to know how to act, and this is what Gita teaches. So according to Swamiji, he says, what is the use of learning how to work? Everybody works in some way or the other with varying degrees of efficiency. That's why Krishna also says, yoga karmasu kaushalam, how to attain dexterity in work. But is dexterity the only thing that is necessary in karma yoga? No. To learn how to work in a very clever way, clever not just to produce results, but cleverness lies in not getting attached, not becoming miserable. So how to obtain the greatest results? For spiritual development within and wonderful results outside. So it should be a combination. A work should not be judged, according to Swamiji, by the effect it shows in the outer world. It may produce a wonderful effect. Many people can do many things very efficiently, but that doesn't mean it leads to spiritual development. If it is done in a spirit of worshipful service, the service of God in man, as his master Sri Ramakrishna told him, that we have to start a new method of worship. We have been worshipping God in temples, in churches, in mosques, and many other places. It is a theocentric approach to religion that we have. Let us make it more human-centric and try to see the same divinity which we see in temples and places of worship in the heart of man, because that divinity pervades or is immanent in the whole creation. So Shiva Gyana Jeev Seva, that idea of worshipping God or dedicating the fruits of all our actions to God is the beautiful idea of karma yoga, which Gita preaches. In Gita, it says, work constantly. Swamiji, I'm quoting Swamiji, work, but be not attached, be not caught. Reserve unto yourself the power of detaching yourself from everything, however beloved, however much the soul might yearn for it, however great the pangs of misery you feel if you were going to leave it. Still, reserve the power of leaving it whenever you want. This secret of detachment is the secret of karma yoga, which the Gita preaches. So that is why I'll conclude with this. Sri Krishna's wonderful message of karma yoga has been summed up in a very nice passage. He says, he who in the midst of the greatest activity finds the sweetest peace, and in the midst of the greatest calmness is most active. He alone has known the secret of life, the secret of karma yoga. And then he says, Krishna shows the way how to do this by being non-attached. Do everything, but do not get identified with anything. Because he gives the explanation that you are the soul, the pure, the free. All the time, you are the witness. Our misery comes not because we work, but because we get attached to that work. So that is one important idea of anasakti, or detached work, or karma yoga, which we get from the Bhagavad Gita. So I think my time is over. I thank Professor Datta for this wonderful opportunity, for this wonderful effort of gathering together people from all over the world for this third conference on Hinduism, management, and philosophy, especially in the light of the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita Research Foundation has been doing a wonderful service by organizing such thoughtful sessions. And I congratulate Professor Datta for his wonderful efforts. Thank you.